And then hi everyone. Thank you people who have joined. We will just give another 10-15 seconds just to validate that we are live, and then we can kick off this session. Thank you so much for joining. As we have always, always promised you that we are going to bring you quality content on this channel. We will try to bring skill set and the knowledge that can differentiate you from others. With that objective in mind, we have always also promised that we will bring you industry experts coming from different domains, different experience level. So in that same series, I am joined by Saurabh and Somesh. Somesh is gonna be doing most of the talk today. And I just to introduce you about Somesh, he is working with Barclays right now and working at Pune. And he has close to 16 years of experience in the industry. Most of it is in the DevOps and the cloud space. And today we're going to talk about the cloud migration. So we can't get anyone better than because he has himself involved in that. Both of us are AWS community builders, and that's how we are associated. And when I saw more details about Somesh, like he has done 7 AWS certifications, I thought myself done 5, and it's a lot of struggle, like a lot of effort, a lot of family time has to be sacrificed. And so without any further delay, let me bring Somesh on board and see, and we can, Somesh, we can jump onto the content. Anything you want to talk about before we?
Yeah. Thanks, Sanjeev. Thanks for introducing me. So before I start, I would really like to thank you for giving me an opportunity on your platform, and the work which you have been doing for the technical community is really appreciable. So yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, so I think we can get into like what sort of, we all understand that, when recession is around, or any company that migrates to cloud, they are looking at different options. What other options we have? Like there's no straightforward path, right? That this is how we migrate to cloud. There are multiple options, but companies or the DevOps engineers, cloud engineers, they need to have the skill to assess which is the right option for them. So please throw some light on this subject. And once the questions, I'm just collecting the question, then towards the end of the session, we can have some question answers.
So much, yeah, before we start going deep dive into it, maybe can you explain our viewers as to what do we mean by the 7 hours of migration? What does actually a migration mean? And also where it fits into like a monolithic versus microservices architecture. So yeah, maybe just you can start up with that, and then we can go deep dive into it.
Sure. So migration, when we say that we are migrating something, it's like there are different approaches, although which we'll be talking about. But when we say migration, it's where you are, maybe putting a system from one infrastructure to other infrastructure, or you are, trying to modernize your architecture. So maybe the application which you have been running since long, it may be, older tech stack, and you want to, and your organization is going through a digital transformation, right? So that can be one of the business cases for you to migrate. So when we, again, when you talk about the migration, it's all about, upgrading your infrastructure, upgrading your application, or getting the business value out of, what you are trying to achieve, basically. Yeah. So before I start and diving deep into the 7 hours, I'll also talk about what are the different business use cases that one has to keep in mind before they actually think about migrating something, right? And also the benefit that one can, or an organization can get out of that migration.
So, yep. So why do you think, Somesh, that the organizations choose to migrate? Why don't we just stay where we are?
It's again, there are different factors, right? So it can be like operational efficiencies that goes into operating a data center. It can be the cost as well. One of the factors where organizations are looking, and this pandemic, we have all seen the impact on the overall cost of running anything, right? It can be your organization or data center, right? So cost is one of the factors. It can be the productivity of the staff, right? It can be, as I said, it can be a digital transformation. So there are different business cases that one organization can identify, and that can be a good starting point for an organization or an enterprise to start thinking of migrating to cloud.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Sanjeev, I think the screen share is disabled. Can you enable it, please?
You should have the permissions.
Okay, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Sign up.
Yeah, thank you. And please confirm when you
we can
see my screen.
Yep.
Okay. So I'll skip this part, as Sanjeev has already introduced me. Okay. Now, today I'll be focusing on why an enterprise should look to migrate to cloud, and what are the different business use cases that an organization can look into. We'll then go into the 7 R's, the cloud migration strategies. We'll also look into the factors which influence your migration strategy. We'll also talk about different AWS migration tools which are available, which could help you in doing the successful migration at scale. And then, although the questions can keep flowing, but we'll try to answer the questions at the end of the session. Okay, so why do we need to migrate, right? And as Saurabh and me and Saurabh were discussing, that it can be a business agility, right? So you are trying, your organization trying to promote the new feature as soon as the client demands, right? So that one of the business cases, and you are lacking in your current way of doing things. Your staff productivity. So maybe your staff is doing a lot of effort in setting up the infrastructure, evaluating different softwares which they can use so that they can innovate. So all those things, it hampers your productivity. And there are some research have happened on, on these different business use cases, where say that 29% increase in their staff, which focuses on innovation. Yeah, so staff, if you move to cloud, then staff can focus on the innovation. Then outsourcing changes, let's say, or also it can be a end of license, the license which you have for whether it can be hardware or software. Maybe they are approaching your end of license, and you don't want to renew those contract, or there is a good SaaS version available by the same vendor. Or it can be outsourcing changes as well, like if your organization or you have merged with some other organization, then there are a lot of redundant components have happened. So migration is one of the strategies which you can look into, that to retire your applications, retire your systems. It can be one of the use cases. Then improved security and operational resiliency. Cost reduction, there have been a lot of focus on reducing the overall cost. When we talk about cost, it is a TCO. We call it total cost of ownership, which includes cost of your running the data center, the manpower, the network infrastructure, observability, everything gets into the TCO. And that's where, it has been proven that, moving to cloud gives up to 66% of infrastructure cost saving over the few years of time. One of the other business cases, and that is one of the clients I worked with previously in my previous engagement, is where client was having multiple data centers within the geographic region, and they wanted to consolidate that data center. Yeah, and they were looking to migrate most of their applications to cloud so that they can get rid of one of the data centers, reduce the cost, and operate few databases, critical databases on their data center, and rest they were happy to migrate to clouds, and so that they can not only do the data center consolidation but also saves the operational cost. One of the other business cases is like you want to expand into different geographic areas. The business you want to expand into different geographic areas, and with different cloud services providers, they have the infrastructure across the globe. It's just a click of a button away, where you can go and deploy your website, your application, in different regions. Digital transformation, as I said, if your organization or enterprise is going through a digital transformation, then cloud is one of the better places where you can get cutting edge technologies, whether it's AI, ML, anything, right? So then again, IoT and AI ML is again one of the business use cases. This is why customers are looking to migrate to cloud and utilize the services and opportunities which cloud provides. So before I deep dive into 7 hours, the typical migration journey involves the 3 phases. Basically, it's assess, or we call it assessment phase. Then you have mobilize, and then you have migrate and modernize. So when we say assessment, so it's all about discovering the portfolio of your infrastructure softwares which are operating on your data centers, right? When we talk about assessment, there are basically 2 types of assessment which we do. First is the portfolio level assessment. So portfolio level assessment gives you a very broader, high-level view of all your inventories inside your data center. It can be multiple data centers as well. And it is achieved through different tools and agents available in the market and provided by the cloud service providers as well. What this portfolio discovery gives is a very high-level view of your overall TCO, total cost of ownership, that once you migrate your inventories or workload to cloud, how much you're going to save. What will be your infrastructure, comparison to what you are running currently, right? So maybe I'm running some VM on RHEL, Red Hat. So how it looks like in cloud, what cost it will have, how much you are going to save, that's all available in the TCO report when it's generated. This phase also involves, because some organization maybe very new to cloud, they are just about to adopt the cloud, so they may not have that level of understanding or clarity on these migrations. Then different cloud service providers, especially if I talk about AWS, they provide sessions and workshops to educate customers on how this migration will happen, what are the different challenges or benefits that they would get. And they also have different immersion day, which is a kind of deep dive workshops for our customers, where they go and understand more in depth of either a migration or it can be any AWS services. And what this assessment phase gives is basically it creates a business case for a change. One thing is important when any organization do the migration is identify that business use case. Right? Unless an organization has a clear business use case for migration, it's not going to help them. right? I always say that if everybody is moving to cloud, an organization doesn't have to follow the same path. They have to have their business use case to migrate to cloud, right? And that's where in the previous slide, what all factors I talked about, and the portfolio analysis that we do in the assessment phase, that gives basically a business case for an organization to migrate to cloud, right? And the second phase of assessment is, we call it as application assessment. That is more of a in the mobilize phase. So portfolio assessment gives a very high level view of all of your workload and infrastructure stack, but that gets fed into in the mobilize phase, where we go and understand or do the assessment for each and every application, right, and assign a target migration strategy against each application. It could be one of the 7 Rs we'll talk about in a minute. Then the landing zone, right? The base, the base framework, base AWS framework or any cloud framework that complies with organization security standards, or any guardrails laid around your organization. Your basic cloud setup on which your application team will be building the applications. Then education, creating of center of excellence to govern your migration, to educate your colleagues inside organization. You partner with you partner with AWS partners or any other cloud partners who have tons of experience in migration, prior migrations. Then you create your migration plan, which is one of the very critical aspect of this mobilize phase, is to create a very detailed planning, right? Identify dependencies, internal, external dependencies when you are migrating any component, right? How the operating model will look like once I migrate, what will be my prioritization of application, which one I should choose to migrate first. All these is done inside the mobilization phase. And then the last phase, third phase, is actually when you start the migration. So if an organization has hundreds of thousands of applications and infrastructure components to migrate, then there are different approaches, like they can opt for factory approach to migrate. All these wave planning done in the mobilize phase gets executed in the migration phase. And that also, and then once you migrate, you can think of some of your applications may need a modernization. Maybe you want to opt for you want to change from monolithic to microservices, and that's where you do it in after you migrate and start getting the benefit out of the migration.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's awesome. Now, one question that I have in mind is, so you said to put the modernization at the very tail end of the migration, right? So would it in some scenarios be advisable that you first modernize and then you move it on to cloud?
It may be, but one of the biggest challenges with modernizing is basically it requires a lot of effort. And when any organization is migrating, they like to get benefit of moving to cloud as soon as possible, right? And that's where it is advisable, it is recommended that you migrate your application, and then because you know that your application is going to work on cloud, it's working on cloud, it gives a lot of confidence to the customers, to the users, that yes, your application can migrate, can operate on cloud. Now, once you have that confidence, you can now confidently start modernizing it. And for modernizing, you need if I talk about AWS, then it has a lot of services. You can think of going serverless. You can think of putting in a container platform, which is the control plane is managed by AWS, Kubernetes, or ECS. So it gives you a lot of additional services or features which you can focus doing the innovation during your modernization.
Cool. Awesome.
Hope that answers your question.
Yes.
Sorry.
So Sanjeev, I can't see the questions if there are any coming in.
I have some question. They are in the chat. The questions are coming in the chat. The question, Somesh, I have is that like who performs these activities? Like who this is relevant for, like assessment, mobilization, migration. Can we just talk briefly about the roles associated at each level?
Sure. So since, I consider like an organization which is migrating, they may not have prior experience or the skill set. And that's where you partner with different, technology vendors, different, or AWS or the cloud service provider, right? So if I talk about AWS, you can engage with their AWS professional services team. They have tons of years of experience in migrating hundreds and thousands of applications to cloud. You can partner with them. You can partner with the software vendors who have different experience, majority of experience in doing this migration. So you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to spend time in, researching around. You can always partner with them. They'll help you bringing your knowledge up to a level where after a certain amount of time, your organization can actually start doing the migrations.
All right.
Yeah. So it can be an assessment phase, it can be mobilization phase, everything. I mean, starting from the assessment to migration, you can partner with software vendors and AWS professional services teams. They'll help you out with that.
All right. Thank you.
So when you have these three different phases, is there any recommendation on how much time should an organization be spending? So should it be a more considerable chunk of time in doing the discovery and planning, and identifying as to what are the activities that we do, or do you suggest that while you are migrating, then you take a call and like do as you go?
So there are some recommended timelines for every phase, but again, the timeline depends on the number of the number of inventories one organization has. But assessment usually takes if I talk about from my experience for the portfolio level assessment, it takes somewhere around 3 to 4 months. It can be 6 months, it can be 8 months as well. But typically it ranges between 4 to 6 months when you start doing the analysis, because it requires a lot of coordination with your existing organizations, technology teams, IT teams. You need to get into because you need to install few agents. For that, they may have a lot of security standards where they do not allow any external agent to be installed on their servers. Then it gets into a discussion and approval. So it takes time, right? And once you are set up, once you have ran your discovery, and so typically then it goes into a planning phase. Planning phase can range again from 3 to 4 months, again depending on scale of the inventories. But once you have at least 2 or 3 waves, when we say wave, it's the number of applications identified, you can actually start doing the migration. Yeah, and migration we'll talk about when we move to different approaches. That how do you pick your application? That this is my first. This should be my first application to migrate to the cloud. How do I do? Whether do I just lift and shift, or any other strategy should I choose? So that's how typically the timeline spans across these 3 phases.
Well, that was great explanation. Thanks, Somesh.
Okay, moving on. So the 7 R's. First is relocate, rehost, replatform, repurchase, refactoring, retire, and retain. Yeah. So we will talk about each and every R in little more detail. But if I talk about the level of efforts, it is most when you do the refactor, because you have to rewrite your application code, from the scratch. You have to just, from monolithic to microservices, you can think of. right? So it can be millions of lines of code. It can be, from migrating from mainframe to, any other tech stack. So you have to rewrite your application. That's where the level of effort is maximum when you do the refactoring. And it is advisable that because of the effort that it requires, you can think of a strategy where you first, lift and shift or replatform, and then you start doing the refactoring. And you can keep on doing it because in parallel, you have already started getting the benefit out of, after that migration to cloud, right? So first is relocate. So when we say relocate, it's basically the hypervisor layer migration, lift and shift at an hypervisor layer. Maybe, for example, you are running vSphere, which is a VMware product vSphere on your data center. It's again a virtual machine. You are already running a containered application on your data center, but you want to, maybe so there are some operational inefficiencies in running those at scale. Maybe there are dynamic NFRs, non-functional requirements, which is restricting your ability to scale in and out very quickly. So if you have those sort of constraints, then you can think of relocating as is your containers into a cloud. Right. So on AWS, you have, for example, Elastic Container Service or Elastic Kubernetes Service. Maybe you are already running your containers on Kubernetes platform on your on-premises, but because Kubernetes is little complex, quite complex, I would say. So you need a specialized skill to handle your control plane, your networking, and all. But in these managed services, which these cloud provider provides, like AWS provides, EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service, their control plane is managed by AWS. So it removes a lot of overhead from a user to, to not maintaining that control plane. You can just focus on your containers, your application, your nodes, security of your nodes. That's it. The control plane and everything is managed by AWS, and similar goes for any other container service like ECS or the VMware. So AWS provides VMware on AWS as well. So you can think of migrating your VMware containers directly on AWS, and that's what we call it as relocate. No code changes, nothing, nothing else changes. It's just simply lift and shift at a hypervisor level. So that's what I was explaining. So you have your vSphere based environment. You can migrate to AWS and start getting the benefit of other native services integrations on the newer platform, where you will be using on AWS. Okay. And the benefit, as I mentioned, operational consistency, workload portability, native integration to different AWS services, application modernization, you can do it on that. So that's the benefit of migrating to VMware on-premise infrastructure to VMware on cloud. Second R is rehost. So rehost is at a, you're just having your snapshot of your machine. Let's say, for example, you are running some application on your on-premise environment. It can be a non-container application. You're running few services, if I talk about little technical, jar, was deployable artifacts as a service on your on-premises environment, and you want to just lift and shift the whole kind of machine, along with OS and everything. So what you do, you do the snapshot, you package everything along with the OS libraries, everything which is installed on your machine. It's basically taking the snapshot of your machine, just take it on cloud. And why do you want to do that? It can be different use cases, like you want to use native services of cloud, you want to modernize, you want to you're suffering from the operational inefficiencies. It can be any reason, right? It can be the end of licenses of what you are running on-premise and you don't want to continue anything. Then you would simply and you want to get the benefit out of cloud, right? So you can just do the lift and shift, and there are tools and services available. You can do it manually if you have limited applications, but if you have hundreds and thousands of applications and systems, then there are tools available like AWS application migration service. It's a very simple service, and it can migrate hundreds and thousands of your machines on AWS. Right? You don't have to worry about. I mean, you can leave a lot of things on this application migration service. It removes a lot of overhead. Yeah. Again, you can migrate from any source. It provides security when you're transferring your workload from your on-premise to AWS. It's all encrypted, and then you require very minimal skill set to operate these automated tools like application migration service, which AWS provides, and it supports wide range of OS, wide range of tech stack. So you don't have to worry about whether my tech stack which I'm running on cloud, whether it will work on whether your tech stack which is running on-premise, whether it will work on cloud, because you are just taking everything as is and moving to cloud. Yeah. So application migration service, a very high level is there are agents available. It basically installs an agent into your on-premise environment. It creates a staging environment. It does first the replication onto the staging environment, and then once it is tested, then it migrates from the staging environment to your AWS environment. Yeah, and then you actually do the cutover when you make sure that everything is working as it should be, and then you do the cutover. Yeah, so it supports a wide variety of platforms ranging from SAP, Oracle, OpenStack, VMware. It supports most of the infrastructure, most of the tech stack. The third migration, the third R migration strategy is replatforming. So replatforming is something we call it lift and reshape, which means that we want to, you are already running, let's say, for example, the database, right? So you are already running Oracle or any other database on your on-premise environment, and but again, from the maintenance perspective, from the end of license perspective, you are looking for a new platform, which is maybe you want to remove a lot of operational overhead of maintenance and patching and everything. Then you can think of replatforming. You're not changing the software. You're not changing anything. You're just replatforming from your on-premise to the cloud, basically, and you're using some managed services like AWS provides relational database services with database engine ranging from Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, or maybe you want to use the Aurora, which is a proprietary database. So that's where the replatforming happens. Right? So you're replatforming from just one platform, from Oracle on your on-premise to maybe Oracle on RDS, or it can be MS SQL Server on-premise to MS SQL Server on AWS in RDS, basically. So it removes a lot of overhead. You don't have to worry about the patching. You don't have to worry about the operational overhead. So it's take a lot of say this hard work doing all these upgrades from a user, or it can be migration from VM to another VM on AWS like EC2. Right? So you deployed it on EC2 and you started getting benefit out of it, right? And replatforming is if I talk about out of 100%, it's the maximum number of customers are doing the replatforming close to 40 or 50% of all the migration strategies, 40 to 50% are falling under the replatforming, where customers are replatforming and then they started getting the benefit out of the migration of the cloud, and then they either continue running on the cloud infrastructure, or they start thinking of modernizing it, breaking into a microservices architecture and all this thing. And as I already explained about the database, you can think, and you can, and yes, when you migrate the database, basically, although there are a range of products available on AWS, but how do you migrate the data, right? How do you, because an organization can have a data ranging from GBs to petabytes of data. So there are different services available on AWS to migrate your data securely on cloud, on AWS basically. And DMS, a database migration service, is one of the services which you can use to migrate from different databases, different source databases to the target databases in AWS. The fourth one is repurchasing. So as a part of your migration plan, as a part of your migration strategy, you may have some applications or some softwares which software vendors may not be supporting going forward, or they provide a SaaS version of it. Right, the commercial of the shelf products they may be providing as a SaaS, or a SaaS solutions as well. So that's where this migration to cloud gives opportunity for customers to go and repurchase those softwares basically. So instead of deploying or installing a software and maintaining on your on-premise infrastructure, you can think of purchasing a SaaS version of it, right? Or purchase a COTS, commercial of the self product from that vendor or any other vendor, depends, right? And you can take a data backup and you can get rid of the application, from your data center. Yeah, so that's what the repurchase is. Then fifth one is refactoring. So refactoring, as the name suggests, it's basically rewriting your application code. Some very good and simple example is, you are running a monolithic application and you want to move to a microservices architecture. Yeah. So one approach, as I mentioned, you can first do the rehost and then you start breaking the components. But if you actually want to do the refactor, then you rewrite your application code. Another good example would be the mainframe migration. If you want to migrate, move away from your mainframe tech stack and move to Java or any other, then you have to rewrite your application on premises, and then once it is running, then you can start you can start migrating, or you can start setting up your application on cloud. Yeah. So that is where the refactoring takes a lot of time. Because it's a redesigning of your whole application, yeah? And it goes the full life cycle of your software development life cycle, from unit test to different iterations. Because you're building almost a new application. You're doing the integration, validating the integrations of the downstream and upstream systems, and then finally you are moving into a production.
That's where, Somesh, most jobs and automation involved.
Exactly. So I'll skip this because I've already explained. And yes, refactoring is, you can also think of utilizing the serverless services to, modernize your application as a serverless application. So when I say serverless, it's where you don't have to manage the underlying infrastructure at all, like AWS Lambda service, right? So there is no underlying infrastructure. I mean, there is an underlying infrastructure, but it's not managed by the customer. It's managed by AWS. You, as a customer or as a user, focus on your code, your application code, and then you only pay for what you use. The time your code runs, and then you also get benefit of scaling of those services, scale up and down very quickly. And obviously, because it's a managed services by AWS, then it's highly available and secure. Right. In similar way, if you're looking to a container, serverless container platform, you can think of using Fargate, with EKS or ECS. So where you don't have to worry about the underlying networking and infrastructure and at all. You just write your Docker file and then build the image and run it in a Fargate container. No hardware patching, nothing. Right? And that's the beauty of having a serverless. So you can have your application refactored to be a true serverless application, basically. Mainframe modernization or a .NET application, as I mentioned, so that you can also refactor and run it on it. So it's, again, AWS provides a service, AWS mainframe modernization, which helps you in identifying the core components, refactoring components which needs refactoring. How do you develop, deploy? So that's the AWS mainframe migration service you can leverage. Sixth one is retain. So when you are doing the database consolidation, or when you are migrating, or maybe customers are closing out their data center, they are moving everything on cloud, there may be some components, some applications which are basically due to maybe the compliance, due to license portability, or any other factor that or maybe it doesn't give a business use case for migrate to cloud. Those kind of applications, and customers can keep their application keep running on premise, right? They don't have to touch it, and it may not be a very business critical, or it may be very business critical, but there is no business use case of it. That customer just want to retain it on their on premises, right? So that's where it categorized as retain. Or what you also can do, if it is not very strict in the compliance or regulations that you have to run it in your data center and all, you can have that application running on a separate VM on a cloud and just do nothing. You just keep your business BAU, or you can retain it on your data center. Depends on your requirement, basically. So that's where the sixth R, retain, comes into the picture.
So just to add there, so it's like compliance may force you to not go to cloud as well, and exactly. Sometimes like not every application is cloud suitable. So exactly. If your application is not some of the capabilities on the cloud are not good enough, then you may run it on premise.
Or if the application is just coming to an end of life, probably in the next couple of months, then you might probably it's not worth migrating. Yep.
Yeah. It can be anything. It can be unsupported OS. It can be compliance requirement, the latency, and anything, right? So you keep it on your, or you can just set up a site-to-site VPN if you want to. Let's say you have migrated the database, but your application, the OS is not supported by the vendor, and you want to have your application running. So you can simply connect your application to a database which is running on cloud. So you can have kind of hybrid model as well. So there are different strategies for it. And the last one is retire, or we call it decommission. If there is no business use case, or you identified some of the applications which have not been used, 4 years, which is, or they don't have any further value inside an organization. The OS is not supported, and not many users use it. So maybe you can think of, repurchase the similar SaaS or COTS application and just retire this. Keep the keep the database, keep the data backup, and just retire the application, decommission the application. So that's where the retire or decommission. So this migration adoption, the cloud adoption, gives an opportunity for customers to identify the applications which are not used, which it doesn't provide a very much business value out of it. Then they can think of retiring or decommission those applications either by purchasing COTS, SaaS, or they just don't need it. So you just decommission those applications. Right. Yep. And those were the 7 R's. And there are factors. I guess I've already explained few of them, but these are the factors which does influence your migration strategy. And when we're talking about retain or relocate, it's where your unsupported OS, the lack of skill set, it can be the legacy application without any business justification, then you want to retain or relocate. Rehost an application which doesn't have an active roadmap, or there is no documentation, there is no source code available for it. Maybe it was written, I don't know, 20 years or 25 years back, where there was a very poor documentation, or even the source code is not available for the current users to modify. So maybe you just have to rehost. Replatform, you're looking to upgrade your application. You want to utilize the cloud native functionality, cloud native services, or you want to, you have bought the commercial off the shelf model of your existing application. So you can just replatform your existing application to cloud. Repurchase due to licensing or any architectural change or cost. If you want to, if you want to get rid of the existing application, which is on on-premise, but the vendor is offering a SaaS version of it. So, and you are willing to purchase a SaaS, you can purchase the SaaS version of that application and start getting benefit out of the cloud. And for that, AWS has AWS Marketplace as well, where there are a lot of ISVs, a lot of software vendors. They are providing their software, their services for customers to buy, to first try and buy it out at a very where there are different pricing models available, and pay as you go, or you can also port your existing license from on-prem to cloud when you do the migration. Refactor, it's when your software components, you have to rewrite everything. You are thinking of the legacy modernization, mainframes. That's where the refactor comes in. And then obviously, if you have something like duplicate resources, if you let's say if your organization, if you have taken over some organization, there may be some applications which are redundant, then you want to get rid of a few of the redundant applications, then you retire those applications as a part of that consolidation activity. And as I also mentioned, that if it doesn't give you any business value, any application doesn't give any business value, then it also comes under the retire. So that also influences your migration strategy. And this is what I was talking about initially, that the rehost and replatform, basically it covers close to 50-60% of the overall migration strategies. And that's where you started quickly getting benefit, from cloud, right? So some may say that, when we do the rehost, it takes 1 year or 3 years to recover the cost or see the benefit of moving to cloud from the cost perspective. But what they were missing there is, as soon as you move to cloud, you get resiliency. You can deploy your applications into multiple availability zones, which is nothing but the multiple data centers. you getting, and that improves your fault tolerance, your resiliency, and you get a lot of cloud native services like you may use code deploy to create an automated pipeline that gives an operational efficiency for your team, right? So it's not always the cost that you immediate get the benefit from cloud, but it can be these non-cost factors which you see as a benefit when you move to cloud. Okay, and we were talking at the very beginning of the session that how do we do? So there are a range of tools and services available for each and every phase. For assessment phase, there is a TSO logic, which is now owned by AWS. Then you have the migration, AWS Migration Hub service. It provides a unified view of how can you plan your migration, and also the application discovery service where you can deploy agents in your data center, or there can be an agentless discovery as well of your data center portfolio, which gives a good inventory, good high-level overview of your inventory of your data centers. And there is also a service called Migration Readiness Assessment, which basically checks the readiness of any organization, of any enterprise, whether they are ready to migrate. So it has a very good set of and an exhaustive list of questions which customer can answer, and then it gives a good output, a report, an outcome, which you along with the partners or AWS teams, you can do the assessment. You can do the assessment that what all areas where you have where the customer need to strengthen before they actually start migrating or start thinking of migration. And once you are sorted, then there are tools and services available which can help you setting up the basic infrastructure, which we call it AWS landing zone or automated landing zone, which gives a platform for any application team to start migrating on cloud, right? And there are patterns available. So migration pattern library, which you can leverage, where it has tons of patterns available, experience from migrations, which was done for hundreds and thousands of customers, how they have migrated, what challenges they have faced, how they have resolved those challenges, what decisions they had made. So all those have in the pattern library, so that you are not reinventing the wheel. Then for the migration phase, once you have done the planning, you are into an execution phase. There are a range of services available, from governance, from database, compute, transfer, which you can leverage. Obviously, it depends on on each and on individual applications. Some applications may be a little complex in architecture. Some applications may be very complex. It may have lot of upstream, downstream connections, which requires not only focusing on your application, but also talking to the different, talking to those basically the downstream application and components teams as well, which this migration is going to impact. Right. So let's say, for example, I own an application, but it connects to, I don't know, a third-party system, a database which is owned by a shared database, which is used by other component teams within the bank. It may be a file transfer. It is basically doing the file transfer in and out from the data center, which may also impact. So it requires a lot of coordination, a lot of discussion with those component teams. The timelines are very important. So you have to basically convey those timelines to your dependent upstream and downstream systems, so that they can also plan their work accordingly, because you would be moving to cloud. So they may also have to have a new endpoint to connect to. So it can be anything, right? So these communication, these timelines, these coordination is very important when an organization is going through a migration process. And again, as I said, you don't have to do it alone. Partner with AWS, partner with any other cloud services provider which you opt for, partner with software vendors, software partners which can help you in doing this migration. Some of the best practices, although this is not an exhaustive list, but some of the best practices which you should follow. As I said, migration readiness assessment, then there is a migration acceleration program offered by AWS, which their AWS team works alongside with the customers and teams to expedite the migration process. They set up their landing zone. They set up the operational infrastructure. How do you operate when you after your migration? Incident management, everything is bundled into that. So think of utilizing the MAP program AWS has. Identify any licensing issues which cannot port to cloud. Landing zone, build a landing zone, involve your CSO, involve your CTO, involve your compliances team when you are building the landing zone, because this is the core platform for any organization when they move to cloud, because this will all have the security guardrails as per the security standards one organization has, right? And the network guardrails as well. The best practices again says that you should start small for greater outcomes. Maybe you identify some low-hanging fruits that the application doesn't have much upstream or downstream connectivity, very less, maybe one or two, which can easily be portable, by coordinating with one or two teams. And the tech stack is also not very old. The tech stack is, it is supported basically, and then you can just do the lift and shift and start getting the benefit of the cloud. I think, and the last thing is like clean up as you go. It's very important. Then once you migrate to cloud, get rid of your on-premise infrastructure. It's going to save a lot of time, a lot of cost, a lot of efforts for you once you migrate and operate on cloud. And again, you use AWS professional services or your service partners to help you start migrating to cloud and operate on post-migration.
Yep. This is very valuable, Somesh. Thank you for this. Just one question on a practical note, if you want to explain to our viewers. So when an organization is migrating, so it's not like a deployment where you can do like a canary deployment or a blue-green deployment. So you don't have much of a testing available of parallel systems. So because if once you have migrated your application to a new infrastructure, you have it all set up there. So what sort of testing do these organizations do, so that they are very sure that the new system, which is either rehosted or replatformed, is working as expected?
So yes, good point. That testing is very important when you migrate, and depends on your migration strategy which you have chosen, right? So let's say you have rehosted some applications from your on-premise to AWS. So it has a new endpoint, it has a new fresh infrastructure, the networking, because when you move to cloud, there are different factors which you need to think of, because when you deploy your applications into multiple availability zones, right? So there can be a latency factor as well. There can be data transfer latency. You would have used a new application or a network load balancer. So you have to think from all perspective, and testing not only from the infrastructure side as well, but you also need to test from the functional perspective and the non-functional side of it as well, whether the SLA which you have defined is meeting when you have running anything on cloud. Have your data strategy as well, data migration strategy as well, because when you are migrating, when you have migrated your database to cloud, your applications may be connecting to cloud as well. Or, I've seen that some of the customers, they have a hybrid approach where due to some data compliance or data residency requirements, they are operating their database on-premise, but their compute layer, their middleware, everything is running on cloud, and they have a connection back to the on-premises. Right. And that's where the testing is very important, because you have to test these latencies, these NFRs, whether it will work or it falls under that SLA which we have defined.
Cool.
Well, Somesh, we have one question in the chat.
Yeah.
Mahesh is asking for refactoring scenario. Since the application is going to be refactored and it's live in production as well, and coding design part is an ongoing process for that application. So how does cloud migration, how do you get a cloud migration window, and how do you manage that kind of scenario?
Correct. So it's a very good question. So when we do any refactoring, right, in a parallel you're already running an application on cloud, and on the other side you are trying to refactor it, right? So you always do it in parallel. It's a parallel infrastructure which you are creating. Let's say I have a monolithic application which is continually serving my clients, right? But here, I may have broken it into tens or hundreds of microservices, and I would have running into, I don't know, maybe a Lambda-based architecture or a container-based architecture. But that's the parallel development you would be doing. And once you tested everything, you are also testing. Once you refactor your downstream components, your connection, your latency, your functional aspects, your non-functional aspects of it. That's where, when you are 100% sure that and you have proven that your refactored application is working as it should be, and that's where you have the cutover strategy. That how do you want to cut over from your monolithic to microservice? And there are different approaches available, which you can think of doing the cutover, basically. So you have to have a parallel infrastructure, for at least for the development, or until that application is ready to cut over. I hope that answers your question, Mahesh.
Yep, it does. Yep. So I think that's a very good talk we had. I think I could visualize like 2-3 years of experience and 2-3 years of effort summarized in 1 hour of time frame, and I could quite relate to it. Can you, Somesh, before we finish off, like maybe we can invite some of the people as well in the chat if they want to join. Not everybody gets to work on these 2-3 years of migrations upfront, but when people go for interviews and that kind of scenario, how do they handle that? How can they build these knowledge? Are there any labs where they can practice these migrations or something of that sort possible for them?
Yes. So I have that is saved. So let me bring up on the screen quickly.
Yeah.
Let me know when you see it.
Yep. Yeah, we can see.
Yeah. So you can go to resources.awscloud.com, cloud migration. There you will get a lot of use cases where people are talking about their transformation journey, their migration journey. There's also a workshop series which you can go and see actually, and I think it provides an environment as well, which I'm not sure you can check, but it gives you a workshop series as well, where the AWS team, they are actually doing the migration, and you can see how these migrations are happening, right? So, like for example, this, if you go in there, it takes one use case. It can be a migration from from your on-premise database to an AWS RDS database. So you can go and start listening or start viewing into this and understand and relate what you have learned from this session. Right. So that's where when you actually see the migration which is happening, in front of you, you can actually then relate and build your knowledge how the migrations have happened. So you may not have experience in doing migration, but you may have knowledge. And that's where you can crack an interview with that knowledge because you prove that you have a good amount of knowledge. And if there is an opportunity, you can also, get your hands on with those migration. So maybe I can share it on the chat, Sanjeev, with you.
Yeah,
so
sure.
You can share it with the participants.
I think it was great experience, Somesh. Like as I mentioned earlier, summarizing massive digital transformation cloud journey in a short period is very difficult, but you have given us so much insights, and I can feel that the waves and all that structure being defined from discovery, assessment to the actual migration itself. So thank you so much. Don't have any more questions from my side. Saurabh, do you have more questions?
I think it was a great session. It was very power packed. I think we have already done an hour now, and the contents in this presentation, it would take days and days if you just read and try to understand it. But I think it was very greatly summarized. And thank you, Somesh, for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the platform. And I hope our technical community has learned a lot from this session. And thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, Saurabh, for providing an opportunity as a platform for our technical communities to learn from us. And I would be more than happy to present any other topic if community wants.
Yep. Thank you so much. So we look forward to actually catching you up again, some other topic. Yep. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.